And welcome back to News Center. Thank you for staying with us. Let me now bring in my guests once again. I've been speaking to David Kosing, who's a Pokot South Member of Parliament, together with Honourable Mark Nyamita, who's the Uriri Member of Parliament. Thank you for staying with us. All right, so as we await this announcement today, and I'll start with you, Mark, what do you think would be the best ideal situation for Kenya today?
The best ideal situation for Kenya today is, one, now that the IEBC are done with what they were paid to do, they should actually disband and move on as we wait to reconstitute a new IEBC in readiness for presidential elections in this country, if we are going to have a president for the whole country. But earlier, before we went for the break, you asked about 12 billion that has actually just gone down the drain in this exercise. For me, I'm not quite surprised about 12 billion. Actually, in the greater scheme of things, 12 billion shillings is very little money for this government. You will remember this is a government that has done SGR at thrice the price that our counterparts in Tanzania have actually done this. You will remember that in this country, just yesterday I was seeing the report from the Auditor General's office. The President and the Deputy President have come on media telling us that they've slashed their salaries, only for the auditor to realize that they've been earning actually almost 4 times what is actually recommended by SRC. You will remember that the many scandals that this government is known for. This is a government that is known for the end justifies the means. So they have been pronounced by JIBC. We call it JIBC, Jubilee IEBC. They've been pronounced, so the 12 billion is really nothing because it has achieved what exactly they actually want. So 12 billion, for me, is a smaller price, if you ask me, for a greater nation that we actually want to go. So if it means that we have to spend the same amount, though exaggerated as it was, you can imagine a repeat election where you have one presidential candidate, one ballot paper being counted. It took them 3 days. It took them actually 4 days to do the final tally.
Right.
You will also remember, we are just about to move to the Supreme Court, whereby we have one of the judges who did this work that has been done by very many officials for the last 4 days. He did it overnight to verify 40,000 plus forms.
Right.
So quite interesting. So the ideal situation for Kenya is for IEBC to actually leave office now without them being asked to leave, because actually they are the biggest culprits in this election. In fact, Chebukati and his team, a big shame, a big letdown to the legal profession, coming on national media and saying that he has complied with the law when he knows that he has violated every single law in this country in this last election. And then we will have an election for a president for the Republic of Kenya.
Honourable Kosing, is that the ideal situation to move this country forward?
Of course not. You know, our guys in NASA have gotten used to lies. And they peddle lies from 1992 up to today. And it's like lies is their right. You know, they have become professional liars. And I think Mheshimiwa needs to be honest. You know, you cannot come and lie and say, look, you know, the president is earning 4 times his salary, while those are unverifiable.
It's in the auditor's report. It's not me.
Those are your own figures. You know, and this is NASA is trying to show their color. And in my view, going forward for this country, we've done election, Betty, and that's the truth. And it's long, you know. We say in politics, 1 day is like almost 10 years, and 10 years can be 1 day in politics. You know, this country is tired. You know, we need this country to move forward. We need people to get back to their jobs. We need people need money. Business people are not being paid. You know, Mama Mboka needs to sell Mboka. You know, our kids need a break. In fact, we should be calling for debates to heal the country. And in fact, and this is way forward. And I don't know how we will heal the country with people who are professional liars, who come to lie in the televisions like this. We need people to move. We need our kids to go back to school. We need university students to come back to school. You know, this country is a standstill just because of politics. So we need to move forward. I am expecting that we have done an election. Our colleagues from NASA did not want it. It happened according to the law of this republic. IEBC has owned up and said, yes, it was done according to the law, and yes, let's move forward. So, of course, there are processes, legal processes and constitutional processes. 7 days if somebody wants to appeal. And it will be really morally wrong for anybody in NASA to appeal this election. It would be really morally wrong.
All right.
And even if they want to sponsor somebody, it's still going to be morally wrong. So we are in fact, we're expecting the president to be sworn in. And once he's sworn in, then we move the country forward.
And there have been calls for dialogue, and even the president yesterday said that, he can only have dialogue once, NASA has exhausted all the opportunities that are there in the Constitution. What is this dialogue all about? Because we've had everybody calling out for dialogue. We've had Raila Odinga saying that he's ready for dialogue. Deputy President, on the other hand, says that there's no dialogue with regard to the election. What is this dialogue all about, Mark?
Raila Odinga has said, there's this been narrative being peddled by my colleagues also here. And just one thing before I answer this, when he talks about morals, that we don't have a moral authority, with all honesty,
yes.
I think anyone in Jubilee should not even pronounce the word moral.
What do you mean?
Because they have no morals for anything, leave alone even in this election for anything. But that's a story for another day. But Raila and the dialogue that he said, Raila said, our Jubilee colleagues have been saying Raila wants us to dialogue, he wants us to have Nusumkate government. We have said, we have no business just discussing someone about half a loaf with a thief who has stolen our bread, that he gives us half a loaf. We have no business. Raila has said he will only have dialogue on matters election, on how we can conduct free, fair, and credible elections in this country. And that's the only dialogue that is going to have with these people. Anything short of that would be, people have met in the street and you can say hi. On the deputy president, on the other side, I saw him on Al Jazeera, struggling, coining his face the much he could, and trying to say, no, there will not be any discussions on elections in this country. I want to tell the deputy president, we are going to discuss issues of elections because elections have not happened. I know he can't wait for 2022 when he wants to contest. We're telling him, hold your horse. You are also not going to be a president of this country until we have a free, fair umpire who is going to take a proper referee. So the discussions that NASA is pushing for, the dialogue, which is a national dialogue, and it doesn't have to happen between Uhuru and Raila himself, all stakeholders, so that the field is level, so that when people go into an election, everyone can come out happy. Look at the celebrations yesterday, and we've been trying to show reports from yesterday. Can you imagine a president who has won with 98%, and you have barely 2% of the people celebrating?
But it's 98% of the people who came out to vote, not really of the population.
98% win in any election, I tell you. 98% win in any election. And you see just about 2% people, celebrating. Compare it to when he won in 2013, it tells you that even him and even his people, look at, media was covering Rift Valley, was covering Nyeri yesterday, just a batch of people. 98% win. You would be expecting, the town would have gone into a complete party. Yeah.
We will continue seeing different things. NASA will be, and my colleague. But I think, Betty, to answer the question of dialogue, nobody has said there's no dialogue. Nobody. And if our friends want dialogue, this House of Dialogue, where my colleague was elected and myself, we can dialogue there, even if it's reforms for election or electoral commission and so on, then we can also have dialogue there. The problem, Betty, and the nation and this country, NASA have never wanted an election. They just want Nusumkate. And they have been insisting on this Nusumkate. They tried with demonstrations to make election not possible. They cheated their supporters that election was not going to happen on 26th. In fact, even most of the people from their zones are asking, what happened? There was election. President was declared. You are cheating us. You are lying to us. These guys even will have a problem going back home and telling people that was not an election. So they want to cheat people that, that person is dressed, I'm dressed, and yet they are naked. So I think they have lived in denial. And that's why they are still even living in denial. So what they want is a Nusumkate. They want an arrangement to say, okay, fine, now let's move forward. So give us something, and we have something. What we have said, and the president said yesterday, exhaust the processes. In fact, the president has said, I respect the law. And what is the law saying? The law is giving us 21 days. Why would we celebrate, for example? Because then there are 21 days, of anything can happen. And the president said, I'm submitting myself to the law. That is a law-abiding citizen. Is just a president of the Republic of Kenya with peace. The other side, it's violence, and many other things. So my view is, we've said, and we want to say it again, that we have no problem with dialogue. Let's finish all these processes, 21 days. If nobody goes to court, which I'm saying, it should be rarely happen. It should rarely happen. Why would somebody go to court? Then after 7 days, it's rarely. I'm not even imagining. So after 7 days, the president is going to be sworn in on 28. Because I will be very surprised why if somebody go to court who subverted, he should be actually, the person who subverted the election should actually be in jail, not in court, seeking reliefs upon something that they blocked. Right. So I'm expecting that then after we finish, after we swear in the president, then other things can come in. And if our colleagues are honest that we want to negotiate on these reforms, they bring it to parliament. That is the house of debate. That is the house of negotiation. And then through their leader, then they can say, now, look, you know what, we don't want this kind of system, we don't want this kind of system. Let them come into parliament, we will negotiate and negotiate it effectively. Not this outside negotiation, that's Nusumkate. Anything outside parliament is Nusumkate, Betty.
Really?
Be honest. Yeah.
Honorable Nyamita,
my friend needs to understand the difference between debate and dialogue. In parliament, we debate, whereby every other person takes a different position and people debate. We don't dialogue in parliament. So when we're talking about national dialogue, and we're not talking about that we want to restrict it to members of parliament. Remember, the president and even Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga don't belong to parliament. And these are our national leaders on either divide. We have the religious leaders, we have the civil society. This country belongs to all of us. And when we're talking about national dialogue, it is going to involve all the other people. And today I will tell you, they will continue chest thumping that there's not going to be dialogue. But when push comes to shove, they will be the one who would have sat on that dialogue table before we actually arrive. And watch this space.
Those are threats. And that is a threat. And that is
if you want to take it as a threat,
no,
I am telling you.
And again, that's
people will sit on that table.
That's also chest thumping, and that's blackmailing. You know, we cannot blackmail for dialogue. Then that means that the dialogue is not actually genuine. They're actually looking for Nusumkate.
Interesting, gentlemen. We have to wrap up. Thank you very much for your time. I've been speaking to Honorable Mark Nyamita of Uriri. He's a member of parliament there, together with David Kosin. He's the honorable member of Pokot South constituency. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. All right, let's wait to hear the announcement today. He says we should wait.
I hope they will endorse the president and we move forward. That is a big announcement.
That's a big